Right, everybody, welcome back for this hero guide. Today we are doing the melee warrior Anub'arak from the Warcraft series, the Traitor King, the Nerubian King. Actually, he went up against the Lich King there in Warcraft 3. He is a melee warrior, and he is a ton of fun. One of the two new heroes, most recent heroes we put in the game along with Azmodan. He's a blast to play. I just picked him up a couple days ago, and I've been loving it. It's hard to put him down. So let's talk about him a little bit. He's a warrior, as we said, but he is not. When you think warrior, you think beefy, you think big, strong, tank, right? Well, Anub'arak has the lowest health pool of any warrior. He starts with 800 hit points. He's actually kind of middle of the road there. He's just a little bit tougher to start than Brightwing. But he's less hit points than a Zeratul or a Kerrigan or a Lili or a Malfurion, so he's at 800. Sonya, the next closest warrior, is at 930 hit points to start. And at level 20, Anub'arak still only has 4,220 hit points, just base hit points. Meanwhile, Stitches, Diablo, or Azmodan, they have 6,000 base hit points at level 20. So you can see he's got 2/3 of the health pool. A very, very low HP warrior. You have to be careful. He's extremely squishy. And if you're playing against him, recognize that, and you can actually focus him down quite a bit. So, at level 20, he will be a little bit beefier. He's not going to be the most fragile anymore. He's, I said, 40,220, so he's tougher than a Hammer, who's at 4,000, and a Gazlo, both at 4,000, getting down into the Assassins after that. But he still has fewer hit points than a Rhaegar or an Uther at that point. So he, like I said, very, very squishy. You want to watch that with him. It's a big thing to keep in mind. And taking a look, even at his health regen is not all that great. To start, it's actually one of the lowest in the game, just the base health regen. And then it does scale up a bit over time. At level 20, he's going to have up there with the other warriors, pretty top tier in his health regen, but still with a low health pool. So you have to be careful, and he is melee, of course. So keep that in mind when you're playing him. Very, very important to recognize that. Looking at his damage to start. I've got a spreadsheet here that I'm pulling up just to get these numbers into context. He's actually pretty high damage with 45 to start. He gets 9 per level, which is middle of the road. It's high for a warrior. It's the highest for a warrior. Tied with, I believe, ETC is the other one who gets 9 per level. So he's 45. He's got a lot of damage for a warrior, and a lot of damage for a hero actually up there. With Zeratul, Arthas. Who else has high damage early? ETC, Stitches, Diablo, Chen are all higher than him by a few points, going up to 50. And so, he still does a ton of damage though, but he's got that low health pool. And at level 20, he's going to be doing 216 damage on a single attack, just the base attack. And that's, like I said, that's still up there with the best of them. Of course, you look at a Zeratul, he will be doing 294 compared to the 216 of Anub'arak. So he's not the highest, but he's got a good chunk of damage there. Where he really shines, though, is his CC, his ability to disrupt the enemy team and just run, just wreak havoc is the best way to put it with him. We're going to be going over the build here, but he's got a couple different ways he can CC people. So let's take a look now at his abilities here in the game. He's got the basic ability here of the Impale with a cooldown of 12 seconds and a mana cost of 65. This shoots a line of spikes in a straight line that damages and stuns enemies along that path. So you can catch multiple heroes with this. The damage is alright at 60 to start, 212 at level 20. So, it does decent. It's alright with damage, just in line with most other stuns and roots. And it's a 1.25 second stun. But just because you have that stun of 1.25 seconds and you can catch multiple heroes, this Impale is a really great ability. He's talking to us there. I'll turn that down for a second till we get into game. And so his W is the Harden Carapace. This helps a little bit with his health pool in that it gives him a shield. It's cooldown of 8 seconds, a mana cost 35. So the mana is not that large of a cost. It's 35. That's pretty cheap for an ability. Not the cheapest, but it's pretty cheap. And it's 120 hit points at level 1, 30 per level, so you're 690 hit point shield with no other talent buffs or anything at level 20. So you tie that into the 4,220 hit points, and he's not quite at 5,000, right? That's what, 4910, I think, something like that, of that nature. I didn't even really do the math. I was just estimating. It's just under 5,000 right there. When you pop that shield, you're still pretty squishy. You'll have like just a few more hit points than Sonya at that point. But like I said, the top tier tanks, the top line, mainline tanks like Stitches, Diablo, etc., they're 6,000 hit points right there, just to give you a comparison. So even with that shield, he's still not tanky, and I'm going to emphasize that a lot probably throughout this guide. That's the biggest thing with him, is you are not really the tankiest of tanks. His E is a Burrow Charge. This is his second form of CC, and it's also an escape and an engage. Great utility in this ability. Its cooldown of 14 seconds and a mana cost of 65, so it's 2 seconds longer than Impale, and that's it's a big long cooldown, so you have to be careful using this as an engage. And what happens is you'll tunnel underground, and you charge in a direction, and when you get to the end of the charge, you come back up, you unburrow. Now you can also reactivate the ability early to unburrow before, to preemptively unburrow, and then you can the idea here is you want to come unburrow underneath your opponents, underneath the enemy heroes, and you'll stun them actually. So that's why it's a second stun. You can burrow underneath their team and come up underneath them and stun them. And then you can launch Impale, or you can do the Impale first and then Burrow Charge. It does a bit of damage, 210 to start and 452 at level 20. So if you can land the Burrow Charges and the Impale, that's what, like 664 damage at level 20 with those two. And this is going to come back in later because we're going to be using Rewind in this build, and you'll get a second set of an Impale and another Burrow Charge, along with the extra shield too. So you can see there'll be like a total of 4 stuns there if you land 2 Burrow Charges and 2 Impales, and the extra shield and the damage of all of this. He still will be a little low health wise, but he does a ton of damage with a ton of CC, and that's what makes him so fun to play. Looking at his heroics, he has 2 really cool choices. The first one, Locust Swarm, has a mana cost of 100, a cooldown of 100 seconds. Now you will spawn a swarm of locusts, and they damage enemies nearby and heal you. It's 20 damage basic and 172 at level 20, with a heal of at level 20 48 per second. And this depends on how many people are around you. If you're surrounded by the enemy team, you're going to get more than that because it's per hero. It deals enemies around you. It's kind of per enemy rather than per hero. So this is kind of like the good ability for when you're engaged with the enemy team. It'll restore some of your health, not a ton, but some, and that's also important in keeping yourself alive. And it also does damage. So it's a really good spell for like I said, engaging the enemy team, keeping yourself alive, and dealing some damage too while you land your stuns. His other ability is another form of CC, so this could be a 5th form. If you do use this, along with the Rewind on the other 2 abilities, you'll have Web Blast. It's a mana of cost of 70, and a cooldown of 45 seconds. So you can see you'll get 2 of these roughly for every Locust Swarm. Not quite with the mana there, but cooldown wise, it's only a 45-second cooldown, and it's a 5-second CC in that you basically take somebody else, you wrap them up like a spider wraps up its prey in web, and you take them out of the fight for up to 5 seconds. The one problem here with the Web Blast is that it can be destroyed by enemy attacks. When somebody in your team is caught in a Web Blast, you can break them out of it and reduce the cooldown on it by attacking the person who's been Web Blasted, and you'll actually get them out sooner. And you can also cast abilities to completely take it down immediately. And that's the one problem with Web Blast. It's got it's potentially against some heroes it's not really useful at all because it will be taken down so quickly, and it won't really CC anybody for that long. It won't take them out of the fight for too long. That's why I generally prefer Locust Swarm. I could see making a case for this in rare circumstances, just taking a pesky hero out of the fight. But I think by and large you'll see Locust Swarm more often than not. And check out the skins here. Give my voice a break before we actually get into the talents. He's a beetly looking dude. I don't know if I can make him dizzy. Oh yeah, he's dizzy. There you go. I made him really dizzy. This is the master skin. Really nice looking. Nice piece of artwork. I look forward to getting that one day. And then the Anub'arak. It reminds me of the guy Cyrax, was it, from Mortal Kombat? Is what I'm guessing this guy's. I don't know if that's a kind of a copyright claim. No, but it does remind me of him quite a bit. He's pretty cool looking. I don't know if that's something from like World of Warcraft that I would not know about, but he's pretty cool looking either way. Regardless, it's really awesome skins. He's a pretty cool dude. He does not have a mount either. It's important to note. He will actually flap his wings, kind of similar to a Zagara, if you're familiar with her at all. And we'll show that off in game. So going through the talents here, we're building him for. The idea is we're going to add a little bit of durability to him because remember he's low hit points and he's a melee warrior, so you really want to have some extra sustain with Anub'arak. And also we're going to be building up his stuns because that is where he shines. He's amazing when it comes to that. I think probably I want to say off the top of my head the best hero when it comes to CCing people, just with the amount of stun that's there. Now I will say one more thing about the health in that he is not really, you should not be a single tank in a lot of ways. You could get away with it, I guess, and I've seen teams actually win. I won the other day, did the Rigar tutorial, the guide. We didn't have a tank. Of course, the other team didn't have a healer, and I think that's what hurt them in the long run. But with this build, you're going to be all right. As a single tank, you're not going to be great, though, so you really have to be careful. And it can definitely pose a lot of problems. He shines in an off-tank role when you have a second tank, like an Arthas. Or, I guess you could pair him with Tyrael because they can both dive, or a Chen. They both have dive potential, but also his Stitches would be like a good tank because he has so many hit points. So looking at the talents to get through this, we've got the tier 1 here, and it's I'm trying to think. There's kind of a couple choices you could potentially take for this, but by and large, you're going to go with extended spikes. That is just, it increases the max range of Impale by 25%. And that allows you to catch the back line of the enemy team. You can get more than one hero. You'll catch people when they're running away. And so I'm taking extended spikes pretty much every time. You could increase your shield duration, increase Harden Carapace's shield duration by 2 seconds with Persistent Carapace. But in my experience, your shield just gets blown up whenever I use it. In most cases, when I'm using it with my playstyle, the duration isn't the problem. It's the fact that it just gets blown up. It's gone as soon as you use it. It's because it's, like I said, 690 basic at level 20. We will buff it later, give it an extra 50%. But that is still 690 is what, 345. So that's 1035, 1035 hit points on the shield. That's not going to last too long. It does help out and absorb a lot of damage, but that 2-second duration, it's just. I personally don't find it that useful. I guess you could make a case for it in certain cases. It does last for 3 seconds already, as I said, and most times that's sufficient. If you want to do a beetle build, you could try the Assault Scarab. Increases the attack damage. He does spawn a beetle that we did not talk about his trait. He spawns a beetle whenever he casts an ability with a cooldown of 8 seconds. And so you'll actually see the little beetles. They do a little bit of damage. You could build them up some. They just feel a little weak. So I don't know, maybe we'll see them buffed in a future patch and you'll actually have like a viable beetle build. But right now, it just doesn't seem like they are strong enough to actually make much of a difference. And so with extended spikes, it's really good. That's why we choose it like over Regen Master. I mean, I could see this late game being really paying off because it would give you extra sustain on Anub'arak. There's actually, I feel like, almost potential here on certain maps. But that extra range of Impale is so good that that's what we go with the Q here, extended spikes. And you actually get that when you're talent gated. Level 4 we're adding to that CC here, and that's Under King. Increase the range of Burrow Charge by 20%, lower the cooldown by 2. This will actually set the cooldowns equal on Impale and Burrow Charge. They'll both be at 12 seconds, and that is amazing because they're both stuns, right? So you're landing stun after stun after stun. And so that's what we take here. Of course, when you're talent gated, I would probably go with Locust Needle. You could do Superiority, I guess. This shines if you're, say, jungling a lot, dealing with a lot of mercenaries, or fighting against a push comp like an Azmodan, Abathur kind of thing. Something with a lot of minions, a Zagara even. The Superiority. Actually, I could see against the Zagara actually taking this. If you're laning against the Zagara and that's causing you a lot of trouble, and they have an Azmodan or an Abathur, Superiority might be actually viable there. But Locust Needle's basic attacks deal 35% of your basic attack damage in an area around the target. It's not terrible. These are all passive abilities. And then, of course, if the beetle build is possible in the future, you could see doing Legion of Beetles. But once you get him untalent-gated, definitely go with Underking. It's that extra range will help you get in and get out a lot, and it stacks nicely with everything else that we're building. Level 7, there's a few good choices here. If you're the jungler and you need Merc Lord, and that's like your style of play, you could take this. With what we're doing to stack with everything else, we do better Barbs, which buffs the Impale, the Q again, and it creates a bed of spikes along Impale's path that slows enemy move speed by 30%. Okay, and it deals 18 damage per second. So you effectively you cast the Impale and the Barbs remain, and then they slow enemies that pass along them. And this is just another form of CC. It slows down people, even if you don't necessarily. Maybe you catch them, or maybe you don't with the initial Impale. It's still going to slow people down, and it's amazing what this does in game, stacking up with all the other stuns. You could say the move speed isn't terrible, but he's got the Burrow Charge to escape if he needs it and to engage. And then casting Harden Carapace also deals 50 damage. I don't really see the use in that. He's got a good bit of damage already, and his role kind of is CC. In this case, off-tank CC. So kind of using the Harden Carapace here, it doesn't really make sense. And I'll say it, if there's a viable Beetle build in the future, you could see possibly taking Leeching Scarabs, but right now it's not really viable. Locust Swarm is the heroic we're going to use. As I said, Web Blast has its problems because of how easily it can be destroyed. In a rare comp, in a rare case, yeah, this actually, the extra CC from Web Blast. I mean, if you land this on one hero and then you're like CCing the rest of their team, they can't break that down at all, and it's a good 5 seconds. You can have their entire team CC'd, and as long as everybody else in your team's dishing out damage, you'll win the team fight pretty easily. So in the right case, the right comp, Web Blast makes sense. But by and large, Locust Swarm is your go-to. Its cooldown of 100 seconds, lasts for 8 seconds. It gives you that extra sustain and deals a little bit of damage. So yeah, we'll most likely be taking Locust Swarm. Then at level 13, there's a couple choices here. The go-to is going to be Chitinous Plating. This is kind of off of the Ultralisk from StarCraft 2. They took the term, and it increases Harden Carapace's shield by 50%. That's amazing in that it gives you a little bit of extra duration, and you're going to have a rewind. I don't want to spoil level 16, but you're getting rewind on 16, so you'll have 2 Carapaces. Now, if they have, say, a Nova and a Falstad or a Zeratul or a combination of those, Spell Shield definitely makes sense, and I'll actually take that over Chitinous Plating for that reduction in ability damage. I've heard people say Burning Rage works if you're playing against Cloakers, because it does. Obviously, if a Stealther, if like a Zeratul is up next to you, he's going to be decloaked by this. I'm not sure that I would really take that in that case. I think Spell Shield would still be better against a Zeratul or a Nova. So that's really what I would go with, just to reduce that damage, and then either you land your E or your Q to knock them out of their cloak, or somebody else in your team casts an AoE effect to knock them out of the cloak. So I wouldn't really take Burning Rage. And then the Symbiotic Armor is Anub'arak's beetles also are granted a shield. So in the future, as I said previously, if there's a beetle build, that'll be viable. But right now, Chitinous Plating is going to be your go-to. While you're talent gated, probably just do Spell Shield. Unless if they don't have any ability damage, sure, take Burning Rage as your talent gated. But then you're going to want to go with Chitinous Plating and only take Spell Shield when they have a lot of ability damage with those assassins that use their spells, like Nova, Zeratul, Falstad. That's of course if they're building Zeratul not for auto attacks, but for ability power. There's a couple different ways to build them. And then looking at 16, as I said, Rewind, by and large, the go-to. You activate to reduce the cooldown of your basic abilities by 10 seconds. So you'll basically charge in, you'll Burrow Charge in, it has a cooldown of 12 seconds now, remember, because we took the level 4 Underking talent. And so you'll burrow in, you'll uproot underneath the enemy team, stun them, launch your Impale, stun them again, and hit your shield, right? You're dealing damage, you rewind, and then 2 seconds after you've cast your first set of CCs, you're stunning them again with a second Impale. If you need to, you can use the Burrow Charge to stun a 4th time, or you can use it as save it and use it as an escape, and you'll have a second shield as well, because the cooldown on the Harden Carapace is only 8 seconds. So it's really, really awesome to be able to use Rewind. It's kind of quirky that he has it on 16 instead of 13, but it actually makes sense because in the game, the level 16 talents are really good, and I would say Rewind is much better on him than Chitinous Plating or Spell Shield. So I just don't see, like, if they were going to take Rewind off of 16 and put it on 13, they'd have to give him a really good choice on 16 to make up for the other talents that he would lose. Blood for Blood isn't bad if you have multiple Blood for Bloods on your team, and the other team's comp is high, like health pool, warrior kind of style. You could use that. When you're talent gated, I would use Epicenter to increase the impact area and damage of Burrow Charge by 100%. That is actually pretty cool. It's a lot of fun to use. And I think if they were to move Rewind to 13, I'd actually take Epicenter over Blood for Blood still, just to build into that CC, unless, except for rare comps. But Rewind, cannot say enough about it. That's what you want here, ideally, once you get untalent-gated. In level 20, there's a bit of a debate. I would never, if you say you take Web Blast on 10, I would not take Crypto Weave because that occupies you. You have to reinforce the Web Blast. As far as I know, I haven't actually used this. So I wouldn't really take that. I'd take Resurgence over if you take Web Blast. But if you're taking Locust Swarm, there's a bit of a debate on whether or not you take Resurgence or Hive Master. And in my cases, with what I've done in games, I've actually been taking Hive Master, and you have to be careful because it's a long death timer late in the game. But I haven't had any trouble with it because you have that Rewind and you have 2 Burrow Charges that really help you get out, plus the 2 shields. So yeah, occasionally you'll get caught and you'll die and you'll be like, oh, I wish I had Resurgence. But having what the Hive Master does, the upgrade for the Locust Swarm, you gain a permanent Vampire Locust that attacks nearby enemy every 3 seconds. And let me see if I can actually bring up the full description here, because they don't show it to you there in the shop, so I can read it to you. I pull it up here. Where is it? Okay. So you gain a permanent Vampire Locust that attacks a nearby enemy every 3 seconds. The Vampire Locust deals 16 damage and returns to heal Anub'arak for 20 health. And then you get an additional 16 damage per level and an additional 4 health per level. So it scales up decently, and that helps with his heroic in that it gives him some sustainability. I've been trying that, but I really think right now you could go either way. Resurgence is really, really good. You could never say, oh, you took Resurgent on Anub'arak, you're crazy. No, you couldn't say that. Resurgence is actually completely viable, but I do take Hive Master with him, and just because he can escape. He's got the Impales for the stuns, and then he has the Burrow Charge for the escape, so he's really hard to catch and kill, especially with the Rewind on 16. And that's why I tend to take Hive Master. I just don't need Resurgence on him, but it's totally viable to take Resurgence. And so that's the ability, the talent, the build for him. We're going to go ahead, cut the video off here, and jump into part 2, get into game, and show him off, because he's a ton of fun. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and part 2 is up next.